Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. I'm here with two white guys. Let me tell you why I started it this way. Because that one with a beard, he called me up and said, Egberto, why aren't you out here in the Woodlands? We are having a Black Lives Matter rally. And I said, in the Woodlands? And Charlie said, yeah, man, we're out here doing stuff. So anyhow, let me first introduce you guys to Charlie Lindahl and David Shontz. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Egberto, it's great to be on with you.
Hey, look, it's great to have you. And I tell you, for me, what I'm seeing here as a black guy, and, you know, Charlie will tell you, Charlie and I go back a very long time. For a longest time, I never got into the racial politics because as a black person, I didn't want to be a black blogger or a black journalist or anything of that nature. But things have changed so much that, you know, we've all had to immerse ourselves into this domain. And Charlie told me that this group out there in the Woodlands, an area that is mostly white, had a group of people that every so often, and I think you were saying every 2 weeks, were out there rallying with the Black Lives Matter moniker. First of all, David, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me why you got involved.
Well, I've been a member of Northwoods Unitarian Universalist Church for many years, over 20 years, and am now the chair of the Social, Economic, and Environmental Justice Committee, which also includes racial justice in its purview. And this is something that we've had ministers talk with us about and bring up of racial justice. The Unitarian Universalist organization itself went through kind of an internal discernment process about their own hiring practices and employment practices relating to racial justice, and has really tried to take on a new level of anti-racism. And I was very inspired by that, and wanted to help, wanted to do something ourselves. And this is something that we came up with that we could do. It's an act of public witness.
Well, look, I'm happy to hear that. Now, Charlie, we go back a long time, as I said. And one of the things I want to ask you personally, because there are several times we've had discussions on race privately. And you've come to me before and said, hey, do you think what I'm doing here is the right thing to do? And I've always told you, if it's coming from the heart, it's the right thing. If you're willing to learn, it's always the right thing. What gave you the passion that says, you know what, I'm this white guy, but and in fact, you used to call yourself the older white guy or something like that.
Old white guy, OWG, yeah.
Right. And that's what you used to call yourself. And then you said, but I want to make a difference. What got you into, I mean, you could sit down and live a comfortable life and not worry about things. Why did you want to immerse yourself in this?
Well, I'll start with genetics. I come from a family of preachers and teachers, and particularly on my mother's side. My grandfather was a Presbyterian minister who actually went over to during the war. He was a chaplain over there, and he organized one of the first interdisciplinary ministries in the military over in Japan to get all of the faiths together to work together, all of them. And that's one of my inspirations is my grandfather. But just in general, I know that I can't say that I've experienced the kind of racial treatment of racism personally as a white guy, but I can as a geek. Being a geek in the middle of most educational settings where you're very socially awkward and you feel like you're ostracized a lot and you're talked about as odd and all that kind of stuff, that affected me a whole lot. And when I see this happening with racism, I'm like, this is not right. What can I do? And the short answer is, and I know David agrees with this and you do too, to me, the most important part of activism is showing up.
Believe it or not, that is true. Now, yeah, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that to follow on, it's basically giving a face to the fact that we have a group in the Woodlands And I think we had, what, 25 people there the last time, David, for example?
Let's see, it was 18 the last time we were,
18?
the last time we've
Okay.
been together. Usually it's between 10 and 20.
Yeah, but the point is, we're actually showing our faces out in public, in a very public area. We're at a bridge that's only a mile away from one of the richest malls in Texas. And just sitting there with signs. We're not screaming, we're not yelling, we're not doing anything crazy. We're just sitting there quietly and showing our signs and passing it to people and so forth. Showing nonviolence, showing that there are people in the Woodlands that support, that understand the need for things to change.
Now,
It
let me
seems
ask
like
you.
a small thing, but that's it. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
let me ask David this, because one of the things is understanding that there is a problem. The other thing is being able to empathize with the problem and understand why these issues arise. What do you see, David, as the problem in the country racially right now?
I think that as from the white perspective on this, that we have to recognize. Well, I was raised and went through the times of it was just after the civil rights movement, and the point of that time was that we shouldn't see color, that we're all the same and we want to be equal, and when we tried that for a good long time and made some progress with it, changed some laws, but it became apparent, particularly after, during and after the Obama administration, that us white folks, we see color immediately before we even think about it. So, Egberto, you as a black man don't get to choose whether I see you as black or not. I see you that way immediately before I think about it. So, the problem right now is for us as white people to internalize that we see color and we do treat people differently, and that we can take action to resist that. We have to actively push back against our culture in order to be anti-racist. If you just go along to get along, you're complicit in the racism that happens today. So we have to push back.
I am so happy you talked about the first time, you see me, you see, the first thing you see is that graphic. I'm a black man. The first thing I see of you is you're a white person or whatever. And there are adjustments that's made right there. I go into a white establishment. I know that I'm going to be followed and I behave accordingly. All of us have learned a particular pattern of behavior because of how we were culturalized. Now, earlier, Charlie, you talked about being a geneticist or having genetic knowledge of genes. And I don't want to bring this too much into the argument, but the reason I'm bringing that in is that we all know that race is a social construct. Your intelligence, my intelligence on all of that has very little to do with pigmentation, but it has a whole lot more to do with culturalization, etc. We know that. Sure. How do you think it is best with what you guys are doing to actually put that into play, that people understand that, as opposed to them following on to that first reaction that came to them from the time they were culturalized through advertising and everything else? In other words, how do we get rid of using the carnal brain and going forward from there?
Well, first of all, it's as David or as David stated, being aware of it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, how do you start to fix things? And the first place to start, and I know this sounds like platitudes, but I'll just go ahead and say it. The place to start is yourself. So, for example, I'm over in, and I've seen a number of times that this has happened. I'll be in a long line at somewhere, I don't care, grocery store, whatever. And I see an older black person or just a black person behind me. And I just say, here, you go first. Just a simple courtesy thing. And a lot of times they kind of look at me like, okay, and they go. Or I'm waiting in a line that's not very well defined, and the clerk looks at me and says, okay, what do you want? And I go, oh no, look at them first. Just very, very simple stuff like that.
I tell you something, Charlie, I want to interrupt you because I mean, that you know, you just said that is very simple stuff,
Yeah.
right? But those are the little things that Black folk actually have to. You just meant the first one I get. The second one is even more profound. Why?
Yeah.
If I've gone into stores first, and
Yeah.
somebody like you come into the store, and immediately you got the privilege to be
Right.
first, and you
Exactly.
acknowledge that, and you tell the person, hey, that is not what happened. Let's all be fierce. I mean, those little things, and I'm glad you actually said that, because
Yeah.
people don't get that. It's not always the big things. The big things are systemic and structural. Redlining is systemic and structural. The way police officers deal with Black bodies are systemic and structural. But they're
Yeah.
the little things that, as you just said, the average person can do. You want to build up on that, David?
Um, yeah, I think it's maybe not so much about being well, polite certainly, but not extra nice, but noticing when we take
Yeah.
that internally
Yeah.
first, noticing your own
Yeah.
reaction, and
Yeah.
not judging it, but noticing your own reaction,
Mhm.
and then being aware of how other people are reacting, so that, yeah, if that clerk, if you've got the Black person approaching the counter and the clerk is looking past them to you as
Mhm.
the white person,
Mhm.
then you defer and say, oh no, you were here first. And doesn't necessarily have to be a racial discussion, but that you have noted, to yourself and to them, that they weren't seeing. So
That
it's very much about seeing.
I mean, I'm, you know, there are people who've written about the invisibility of being Black. So that is a lot in that concept. Well, I tell you what, tell us a little bit about your march, or your rallies that you do in the Woodlands, and how do you publicize it, and what do you want to accomplish for it? How long are you going to do it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Um, that's a good segue there, because Ibrahim X. Kendi said that the difference between a demonstration and a protest is sustained effort.
Mm.
That our will is to keep doing this until something changes, and we've been doing it for a year now.
Mhm.
So we come out every 2 weeks. It's mostly church based, but we actually publicize to some other groups. I want to give a specific shout out to Sheree McWilliams. She has a Facebook page for Black Lives Matter, attracts attention of all kinds. And she has come out with us on several occasions and shared with us. We also have folks coming out from the Woodlands Coalition for Equality. And anybody that's sympathetic is willing to join us. Anybody that's not sympathetic is certainly welcome to have a dialogue with us, as long as we're all comfortable and civil. And I think we're prepared for that. We are performing an active public witness, so we're out there for that.
Excellent. I'll put all the information about your event in the blog that goes along with this as well. Charlie, what you want to add to that?
Oh, what I wanted to say is that let's see, where was I going with that?
Well, while you rethink,
the preparation, we have preparation. We have a lot of discussion ahead of time, saying what happens if we run across somebody that's been, that's openly hostile. How do we handle it? And we have rehearsed what will happen there. We're going to make sure that we do not react with anger. We do not react with, we don't push back with any kind of, name calling or anything like that. And we also very much are aware of our legal rights, both in the state and locally and in the Woodlands. What are we allowed to do? We only do it on this particular bridge. That is a public space, period, end of story. So we've done our homework in terms of preparation in case something should happen, which so far it hasn't.
Well, look, I want to close this by asking you two guys, as two white guys, a very important, first, a very important question. Right now, in order to divide and separate folks, a lot of the right has targeted white men, white young men, white older men. And what they're trying to do is, because white men have been the dominant factor in our economic structure, in just about every part of our structure, they want you to feel like you're losing something by others gaining something. What can both of you, what can your movement do to make sure that that isn't cauterized into the minds of white boys that are coming up, because that is a sort of message that they're getting to these guys. Hey guys, these guys are trying to take your birthright away. Let's start with you, David.
This is very, very important, Egberto. The first principle of Unitarian Universalism is that every person has inherent worth and dignity. In short, all lives matter. What we're about is that all lives will matter when everyone is treated with the same dignity and respect, and that's not happening now. If there's one thing that I would want my skin folk, my other white men like me to understand, is that this is not a zero-sum game, like you've been told over and over. This is not a zero-sum game. By lifting up people who've been oppressed, in this case, Black people, we release ourselves from that burden of playing the role of the oppressor. That it is good for us, it's good for everybody. Yes, different people will benefit differently, but everyone is lifted up when we oppose oppression.
Charlie?
Well, one of the things I'd like to suggest, and this is, by the way, I know you expressed this in your book as well, going back to zero-sum game thing, also is whenever you're dealing with someone that apparently doesn't agree with you, what you try and do is find points of agreement. And here's the point of agreement. I, as a white person, know that I'm giving something up. I know it, and I freely do it. I am willing to share. I have more than enough for myself. I am absolutely and great and happily will give up some of my power, privilege, whatever, to help others. I have so much of it. I have plenty to spare. I don't mind giving it away. And that counters that argument about, oh, they're taking it away. Yes, they are. I am giving it to them. Here's why.
I want to add a corollary to that because it's important. And the corollary to giving up the privilege is you are really giving up what all of us should really have. In other words, it shouldn't be thought of as I have the right to give you the privilege, but what it is supposed to be. As long as we see it that way. Look,
I agree.
David, Shontz, and Charlie Lindahl, my brother from another mother. It's been my pleasure to have both of you on Politics Done Right. I think what you're doing makes for a better world, and you're improving where we are at this point. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.